Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I'm really thrilled you're here today because we're going to completely shatter a super common and honestly incredibly dangerous misconception in performance measurement. We're talking about why a lower percentage can actually create more value for a business. If you're prepping for your exams or frankly just want to make better business decisions, mastering this concept is absolutely essential. Let's get right into it.
So let me start off by asking you a question. Would you ever reject a project that actively increases shareholder value? Now, your immediate instinct is probably, well, no way. That makes absolutely no business sense. But what if I told you that relying on the wrong performance metric might trick you into doing exactly that? It literally happens in boardrooms every single day, and trust me, it's a massive trap on your exams.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the ROI illusion and its percentage pitfalls.
There's a really fundamental difference in how we measure success here. On the left side, we've got return on investment, or ROI. Now, ROI is incredibly popular, mostly because it's a percentage. It makes it super easy to compare your division to your competitors or to the firm's cost of capital. But at the end of the day, it's just a percentage. Now look on the right. We have residual income. Residual income is measured in actual money. We're talking hard dollars and cents. While a percentage tells you the rate of return, a monetary amount tells you the actual absolute value being created. You're going to want to keep this visual contrast in the back of your mind because it's kind of the key to everything we're about to discuss. Moving right along to Section 2, residual income and how we actually measure value.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the core principle behind residual income. A firm only earns a real profit after it has repaid its cost of capital. It's a three-step process. In Step 1, you find your operating income. Easy enough. For Step 2, you've got to calculate your target return. You do this by taking your average invested capital and multiplying it by the imputed interest rate, which, by the way, is really just a fancy term for the company's required rate of return. Finally, in Step 3, you just subtract that target return from your operating income. The money left over, that is your residual income. It's the true economic value created above and beyond what the providers of capital are demanding.
Let's actually bring this math to life with a specific example straight from our source material. Imagine a firm with $100,000 in sales and $58,000 in operating expenses. That gives us an operating income of $42,000, right? Now, let's say they have $800,000 in capital at year end and $600,000 at the previous year end. So that makes an average invested capital of $700,000. If the firm's imputed interest rate is 5.5%, their target return is 5.5% of that $700,000. Which comes out to $38,500. So we take our $42,000 operating income, subtract the $38,500 target return, and boom, we are left with a positive residual income of $3,500. Because this number is positive, this firm literally just created $3,500 of real wealth for its shareholders. All right, let's see how this plays out in the real world. Section 3, the manager's dilemma, a scenario. Picture this. We have a manager who runs a highly successful division that's currently generating a 12% ROI. Doing great, right? Well, this manager is suddenly presented with a new, proposed project that's estimated to return 10%. You can probably immediately spot the conflict here. The new project's return is noticeably lower than the division's current stellar 12% performance. And right here is the psychological trap. The manager looks at that 10% project and thinks, reject it. It hurts my optics. And you can kind of see why. If the manager is evaluated solely on their division's overall ROI, accepting a 10% project is going to average down their current 12% performance. Their overall percentage is definitely going to drop. So out of pure self-interest, the manager rejects the project. But think back to our earlier question. Have they just made a terrible mistake for the company as a whole? Yes, they absolutely have. The golden rule here is that if the residual income of that 10% project is positive, it increases shareholder value. You have to accept it. Even though the percentage return of the project is lower than the division's current average, if that 10% return is still higher than the firm's actual cost of capital, the project generates positive residual income. By rejecting it just to protect their own ROI percentage, the manager literally just destroyed potential wealth for the shareholders. This right here is exactly why managing strictly by ROI can be incredibly destructive.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. Section 4, the IRR and NPV analogy.
So on the left side, we're pairing up ROI and IRR, the internal rate of return. Now, both of these are percentages. They are fantastic for identifying the highest return per unit of investment. But percentages have limits. On the right side, we pair residual income with NPV, net present value. Both of these are monetary amounts. They identify the total absolute return to the firm. Ultimately, a firm cannot deposit percentages into the bank, right? It can only deposit dollars. Therefore, just as NPV is theoretically superior to IRR when you're choosing between mutually exclusive projects, residual income is vastly superior to ROI for evaluating whether a project creates true economic value.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Section 5, Exam Golden Rules and How to Avoid Common Traps.
Listen, you do not want to fall for these common candidate mistakes. First, never assume a higher percentage automatically creates more value. Think about it. A 50% return on a $1 investment is just 50 cents, but a 10% return on $1 million investment, that's $100,000. Second, never ever choose ROI over residual income when the question specifically asks about maximizing shareholder value. And third, when you're calculating residual income, do not forget to deduct the cost of capital. That's the imputed interest rate times the average invested capital. Remember, it is not real profit until the cost of capital is paid.
In fact, if you remember absolutely nothing else from this explainer, I need you to burn this ultimate decision rule into your memory. Always accept the project if residual income is positive. If the math results in a number greater than 0, it adds value to the firm. Period. It does not matter what the division's past ROI was. It honestly doesn't matter if the overall percentage drops. If residual income is positive, it is a glaring green light.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. When you're evaluating performance, whether that's in a textbook, sitting for an exam, or in an actual boardroom, are you maximizing percentages, or are you maximizing actual value? Because as we've clearly seen today, those two goals are definitely not always the same thing. Focusing on the absolute dollars, the residual income, ensures you're always aligned with creating true wealth. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep applying these visual frameworks to your studies, and we'll see you next time.